So I grew up in the Pentecostal church, and both of my grandfathers were Republicans. One of them served in World War II. He was a very patriotic guy. And so I remember growing up hearing conservative politicians talking about morals and values and how this country was founded on God and founded on the church. And when I was a kid, I believed that stuff until I grew up and started studying it for myself and realized that a lot of the conservative talking points were just that. They were only talking points. I remember one time going to my uncle and telling him about this politician that I'd heard stand up and talk about morals and values and how good it sounded. And I said, yeah, I said, he's one of us. And my uncle said, but have you ever looked at his voting record? Have you ever seen what he actually votes for and votes against? And when I began to dig into these people, I began to realize that these were just all talking points and cliches, and that they didn't have my best interest at heart at all. So when I stumbled across this clip of a guy named Ryan Walters out in Oklahoma, he's a superintendent of public schools. He wants the Bible taught in school. And on the surface, to people who don't truly understand this might sound good, but there's a lot more to unpack. So let's take a look at it, and then we're going to talk more about it.
And instead of allowing Biden and the unions to inject their ideology through graphic pornography like genderqueer and flamer, we want the Constitution, we want the Bible in our schools where kids understand our nation's history and what has made this country great.
So you actually want to not put the Bible in schools, but teach from the Bible in schools, which is something which I think the Supreme Court ruled against many, many years ago.
Yes, sir, and we need to take a look at this. The reality is the Bible is a foundational document in our country's history. Read the founders, read their letters, listen to what these men and women said about why founding a country with the freedom of religion, the free exercise of religion was so important.
Notice how he led with his homophobia first. They always do this. This is always a pattern with these kind of people. They start off with their bigotry, and then they try to back it up by cherry picking the Bible. But if he really wants to have the conversation about the founding fathers and what they had to say about religion, I'll be glad to be the guy to have that discussion, because there's a whole lot of quotes from the founding fathers that goes completely against everything that he just said. We're going to start off with Thomas Jefferson, who said this: religious institutions that use government power in support of themselves and force their views on persons of other faiths or of no faith undermine our civil rights. Then we have James Madison, who said, the separation of church and state is to keep forever from these shores the ceaseless strife that has soaked the soil of Europe with blood for centuries. And then John Adams had this to say: this would be the best of all possible worlds if there were no religion in it. John Adams also said, as the government of the United States is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion or tranquility of Muslims, it is declared that no pretext arising from religious opinion shall ever protect an interruption of the harmony existing between the two countries. The U.S. is not a Christian nation any more than it is a Jewish or Mohammedan nation. And then Thomas Paine said, of all the tyrannies that affect mankind, tyranny in religion is the worst. See, folks, the founding fathers understood why we have the separation of church and state. They understood that we came to this country to escape religious persecution. They understood that we came to this country to escape the church ruling over the state. They had saw all the war and all the violence that had happened because of church controlling states. That's why we came here to start with. But Republicans have been out there on this crusade to try to force their viewpoints and their religious views on everyone else, and that is not how it is supposed to be. Everyone is supposed to be free to worship whoever they want to, and there's nothing wrong with that. Whatever religion you want to practice, that's your business. You have a right to do that. You're protected under the Constitution to worship however you see fit. But what you're not protected from and what you're not allowed to do is impose those viewpoints on everyone else. And you shouldn't want anyone imposing their religious views on you, because the Bible is a book that has been edited over and over and over again, because everyone interprets that book completely differently. That's why there's so many different interpretations. That's why there's so many different versions. So if you turn over your country to someone and say, yeah, run this country based on your religious viewpoints, okay, they might walk in line with you for a little while, but then suddenly they may come up, they may pick out a verse of scripture, they may interpret it a certain way, and suddenly you're having to live under their rule. And you're going, wait a minute, that's not how I see it. That's why that we have to have politicians make their decisions based on facts and evidence and research and data. That's what they have to bring to the table. That's what they have to look at. They have to look at science. You can't have people sitting there talking about their religious viewpoints and saying this is why we should do things, because then things can get really out of hand. You guys remember when Mike Johnson said that he was the new Moses? He literally thinks the Lord spoke to him and told him he's Moses. This is insane, but check it out again. And what's so ironic about him standing in front of that "In God We Trust" sign is that "In God We Trust" was not originally on our money. It first appeared on a 2-cent piece in 1864. Then it appeared on a postage stamp in 1954. Then in 1955, President Eisenhower signed a law that would put it on all of our money. And I think it first appeared in like 56 or 57. So it wasn't originally on there. And neither was the phrase "one nation under God." That's one they love to throw around a lot, but that was not in the original pledge. That wasn't added again until 1954. During the Cold War, during a time when we're trying to separate ourselves from Russia, and where it's a very patriotic era, that's when this stuff started coming in. So this really isn't new. What we're seeing today with Republicans trying to borrow from religion and push this into the forefront really isn't new. They've been trying to do it all along. It's just that now they're going out here and they're embracing the absolute worst parts of it. They're going out there and they're cherry picking out the worst parts and weaponizing that against people they disagree with and weaponizing that against people they hate. Look at all the damage they've done to women in this country, and they can use the Bible to justify it. They can use their interpretation of the Bible to justify it. Look at all the damage they've done to the gay community. They can use their Bible to justify it. And I'm not saying that all Christians do that. There are Christians out there who do unto others as they would have others do unto them. They live clean, productive lives. They don't try to impose their religion on people. I know a whole lot of Christians that are that way, but that's not what these MAGA politicians are out for. That's not who they are. They're embracing the very worst parts of it, and they're using it to empower themselves. And they're spreading ignorance out to everyone. Like I've said so many times, Donald Trump brought in people into the political discussion that knew absolutely nothing about government or politics. And he's also brought in people that knew absolutely nothing about religion. I know so many people in this world, they'll say, it's funny because they'll say, oh, this many percent of Americans, they're Christians. And I wonder how many truly are, or how many just look down and said, wait a minute, what are we? Are we Baptists? We Methodists? Oh yeah, that's what we are. That's what my papa was. Yeah, I think my papa was Pentecostal, so therefore I am. They don't think for themselves. They're easily led and they're easily manipulated. And when you give someone like Donald Trump the cult of personality, when you give someone like that the Bible, and then you hand it off to people like Mike Johnson, folks, it can get completely out of hand. We are starting to already live in a completely different America, and things could get worse if they remain in power. We have to vote these people out, and we have to vote for people who will make their decisions based on data and research and evidence and leave their religious views at home. There's nothing wrong with having them. I'm not here to shout down people's religious views. I want to make that clear. If you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim, if you're an atheist, if you're agnostic, Buddhist, I don't care what you are. I just don't want you imposing your viewpoints on everyone else in government. Now, does that mean you can't make a YouTube video and speak out? Absolutely. I love when people get to my comment section and start saying, well, I can say what I want to. Yeah, you can. You can say anything you want to. Make your own YouTube video, make your own YouTube channel, make your own podcast, talk about how much religion means to you, but don't put it in our government, and don't support these politicians that are wanting it taught in school, because it's not constitutional. It never has been, and it never will be.